Kevin Witherstein. I got the good fortune of working for an organization that does something rather interesting. We kind of do networking, but we use Linux to do it. So interesting. So it's kind of given me a different perspective on the DevOps community, and actually coming from a networking background, it's a whole new world for me. So real quick, I do the Twitters, have an email. Is that better? All right. So kind of want to start off with what is NetDevOps? Has anybody even heard of the term before? Got a few in here? Yeah. So networking methods with a DevOps mindset. Little out of the ordinary, right? So it's one of those things where trying to take and take some of the good practices that the DevOps community's got and apply it to the networking front. So kind of talk about that here, how I got there. So this is the way, when I submitted the talk, really wanted to kind of give an outline of my transition and kind of what it's been like for me to go from a 20-plus year career working for hardware vendors and doing networking and transitioning into more of a DevOps type of a role and really trying to use the same tool sets that the folks in the sysadmin community have used in that networking front and actually make it work. So it's a big change for somebody that's used to banging away on a CLI. So that journey for me is a whole lot of logos. And there's, 20 plus years, you can put a lot of logos on your resume, right? And so that's exactly what I've done. I've had the pretty good fortune of working for some interesting and dynamic companies. And it all kind of starts on the farm, which isn't really dynamic, but it was good education. And then, just kind of starting from the military and then going to those different hardware vendors. But each one of these places that I worked gave me a certain perspective and kind of prepared that transition from doing things the old way to kind of transitioning to the new way. So I kind of want to take you through that journey a little bit. So continuous deployment, all right, that .BAK thing, it kind of hit a little close to home. Really close to home. So, all right, in the networking world, when you build a configuration, typically you're building a text file. You're going into a device, you're banging away at the CLI, you kick out a show command to say, okay, here's what it looks like, and you're going to cut and paste that into a file. And you're going to store it on a server somewhere and hope to God the server file system doesn't get corrupted. So it happens, right? Your files go away, now you're trying to recreate the configuration from scratch. It really, really sucks. So cut and paste, no thank you. Unless you're copying somebody's code, then cut and paste kind of works. Configuration management, spreadsheets. Oh, I've got this network over here. I've got a spreadsheet to track the changes. I've got a spreadsheet to track the IP addressing. It's just not a good way to do things. So number two. And then this is just kind of the way things worked in the 90s when I was working in networking, right? And then change control, it's the Wild West out there. You kind of run and do what you want, or maybe you'll ask the boss. But you're just going to get it done, right? So we kind of, moving into the 2000s, took a different job role, little different approach. So okay, this NMS thing, right? Let's try to take and put some sanity behind this, all these other things we've been doing, and have like a central control system take care of it all. NMS was supposed to be that answer at the time. And the guys that were really smart were writing expect scripts and trying to automate. Yeah. It was like, okay, this is cool. Kind of making some headway, making things a little bit more scalable. And Unix was kind of the backbone operating system at the time for getting those kind of things done. If you wanted to do anything at scale, Unix was your answer. Linux was around, but most of us never touched it at that point. So, scripts, yeah, lots of scripts. So I transitioned from the enterprise to a service provider world for a good 10 to 15 years. And in that world, it was like Unix was a big thing, but you saw that transition to Linux, and it was happening somewhat slowly, but it was happening. The thing about the service provider world, everything that we did in the enterprise was magnified because it was all at scale. So if you wrote an expect script, and I actually experienced this, somebody wrote an expect script, put it in place, ran it against a production DSL network. All you happy DSL customers out there from the early 2000s, crashed all the boxes. Yeah, right? So, yeah, it was fun. And the vendor takes all the blame for those kind of things. So the blast radius is massive. Hundreds of thousands of users, gone. You got to go rebuild those systems. Not fun. So to try to solve for some of those problems, the company that I worked for at the time was Unisphere Networks, which was acquired by Juniper. We had this really, really cool idea. Rather than having people get into boxes and touch them all the time, why don't we go build a centralized control system so that the end user could control their own experience and change their own settings? That should solve some of those problems that you're writing expect scripts to do configuration for, right? Could have, but the industry wasn't really quite ready for that yet. So that thing kind of sat on a shelf. But that was really where I started getting my introduction to Linux and just starting to use Linux in the networking space. It's mostly on those management systems. Does anybody relate to this story at all? Got a few hands out there? Anybody that's really dedicated to doing network infrastructure? Couple hands? Okay, that's fine. I'm used to that, right? It's like you go to a DevOps Day conference and you're talking to DevOps people. That's awesome. But here I am, speaking of diversity, networking guy, in a room with a couple other networking guys and gals. Anyway, here we are. So after some time in the service provider world, I actually went to go work with the wireless stuff. I never stay anywhere longer than like 4 or 5 years, typically, because it's like the boredom sets in. It's like, I got to do something different, right? So talk about a departure from what I'd been doing. Wireless LAN. This is cool stuff. We do hotspots were getting hot at the time. I'm like, all right, let's go play with this for a little while and try to figure it out. Wireless, by the way, is really, really fun to engineer. Talk about dynamic. There's, you see where those waves are at? You can't engineer it easily. You got to rely on your tools, 100%. So in the wireless world, this is where, at this time, it was like 2004, 2005, a lot of folks were starting to use Linux for their NMS systems. I remember a guy called me up and goes, hey, I need to figure out if your NMS system's going to work on SUSE. I'm like, what's a SUSE? So me and Google, we got really familiar, right? Because every time somebody would ask a question, it's like, I got to go look this up because I have no idea what this guy's asking me. Because I'm working on the wireless stuff, not Linux. But anyway, the two kind of come together. So the pattern here is everything just keeps kind of trending in the Linux direction. And everything that I seem to be working on, even from the earliest days, is going to a central control framework, trying to at least. It's like we've been trying to get there, and it's not quite happened yet. So wireless LAN is another example of what I saw was people trying to do SDN-like things, DevOps-like things, but taking a completely different approach to it. But they did have central control. Wireless LAN controller, anyone? No? All right, a couple guys, all right, cool. You feel me? Yeah. It was a much better way of doing wireless than having an AP and configuring an AP and talking to a CLI on like 1,000 APs at once. That sucks. All right, so from there I got bored again, went to go play in the optical space a little bit. Anybody ever done optical networking? All right, we got a same hand keeps popping up, I like it. All right, so wireless to optical. How does that happen? Well, it's all wavelengths. So I figured, what the hell, we'll give this a try. And so we did. Now, optical's really interesting. If you talk to the old guys, they're like, oh yeah, there's this thing called TL1. We do all our configuration through TL1. No, they don't. They're just trying to show you how cool they are. TL1 sucks. It's like the worst CLI I swear I've ever seen. But people have actually used it, like I swear it must have been in the 60s or 70s. So taking that perspective, somebody coming into the space new, everything was driven around NMS. So NMS systems, and when you interact with an optical product, it's all done through a web browser. Central control, pretty cool. So that central control is not really Linux related, but it is kind of showing that they're trying to develop to having a single pane of glass do massive things across an entire infrastructure, which is cool. So there's kind of a tendency here to see some parallels, right? All right. Then we got to a point where we said, okay, this optical network thing's cool. You guys have kind of got the central control thing figured out. Route switch people, how are we going to make all this, yeah, how are we going to make all this stuff talk together and talk together nicely? Because you had two different worlds. I love the wall slide. I actually took a picture of that and sent it out on the Slack channel to my SE team to say, hey guys, check this out. The walls, I love it. So we talk about silos constantly. You got, and in this world, we got the DevOps silo, you know, dev silo, ops silo. Hey, there's a networking silo, and there's also a security silo, and there's got to be more silos that I just haven't identified right this minute, but there are silos out there. So that wall, like, it kind of reminds me of the 90s. Remember it was at 1990 when, I don't know who the president was at the time, they said, tear down that wall, talking to the Soviets. Was it Reagan? Thank you. My memory is wonderful. So all I could think of was tear down that wall, and it's awesome because there's multiple walls. We need to kind of at least shorten them, not make them so hard to get over. So speaking of walls, optical networking, route switch networking, same walls. Even within the networking domain, you've got walls between different teams building infrastructure. It's crazy. So converging those components to where they can be managed, talk to each other. You don't have to make everything a mystery. You know, working together and sharing ideas is a wonderful thing. It helps everybody get to the end goal faster. That's kind of one of the key points I'm driving to here. So for me personally, when this all started happening, they started sending me to training like for Python. I'm like, oh wow, I thought a Python was a snake. You want me to be a coder? Wait a minute, I'm a CLI jockey. Started playing with OpenStack. Holy cow, that was an eye-opening experience. So Python, then OpenStack? Yeah. So I just kind of took it on myself to build a data center lab for a team. I supported a team of about 20 SEs that were going out and talking to folks every day. It's like, you guys need a playpen. So I built a playpen. Managing virtual machines for 20 plus SEs that want to do different things, it gave me a little bit of a perspective on what folks deal with day to day in the enterprise, managing data centers. It's a pain. So I was like, okay, there's this VMware thing out there. I'm going to try this at least and see how it works. And it actually worked well. You can, build a golden image, spin it up, spin it down. That was neat, but it's tedious, right? You got to go click, 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 and you're always going to forget something, and somebody's going to complain it doesn't work like I want to. So I found myself babysitting this playpen, literally babysitting it constantly. And I was like, I can't get my real job done because I'm constantly babysitting this thing. So anyway, from that, I kind of set the base for me that I needed to do some retooling, like go figure some of this Python stuff out, figure the OpenStack stuff out, figure out how to do a little bit more automation than what I'd seen so far from where I'd been working. And that just kind of set the base for me on where I was going to go next. So where I went next was VMware to go figure out this virtual networking thing. So has anybody actually seen NSX, the NSX product? It's really, really cool because, yeah, I got a 10 there. Awesome. So NSX was neat because it took the entire networking infrastructure and it put it in software. Now I can do all these things like firewall, NAT, security, switching, routing. I could do all the stuff that I did with physical boxes in software. It was mind-blowing for me. But anyway, I got to go play with that for a while. It was really, really cool. I had fun. But once again, point and click, point and click. There's automation tools to do that stuff too, but anyway, it wasn't long for me. So this turtle thing came calling. So the name of the company I work for is Cumulus Networks. Has anybody actually heard of us? Got a couple hands? Good. Linux operating system on a switch/router for data center networking. Wow. Everybody that I know that has an operating system for a networking device in the data center has a Linux operating system, but you don't interact with the Linux typically. You interact with an interface, an API. So it's a little different. So real quick on the picture on the right. Anybody ever had a pet turtle? Couple hands? Have you ever poked it in the mouth just to see what it would do? Don't do that. I was living in Colorado at the time, and I had made a sand turtle. A couple sand turtles would crawl up around the house, and so I always thought I needed a pet turtle. So I grabbed this turtle, and comedy break, by the way. And I was poking at the guy's mouth, trying to get his mouth. I wanted to see if he had teeth. He bit my finger, and I was banging that poor turtle against the tree. I couldn't get him to let go of my finger. I thought for sure I was going to lose a finger that day. Anyway, I still have my fingers. But the only reason I really bring this up is because every time I hear about how Linux got the Tux mascot, I'm like, yeah, I got a story too. It's not quite as good, but anyway, I thought I'd share that. So going into Cumulus, I was like, all right, it's Linux networking. How hard can it be? I've been doing NSX, right? It's like everything in networking under the sun, and you're doing it right there in a piece of software. And it's a Linux hypervisor, by the way. Okay, so I got into automation, like real automation, like not using a GUI, like Ansible, Chef, Puppet, that kind of stuff. I was like, okay, this is cool, but I don't know how to make any of this stuff work in the background. So it's like there's a whole new ecosystem here that I had no clue about, but it was a lot of fun learning. Kinda. Yeah. So I saw Nathan speak about a year ago, almost a year ago now, and I was like really, actually a lot of the DevOps speakers, they do a really good job in the DevOps community of pictures, and I sucked at pictures for a long time. So I was like, I got to figure out a way to get a little bit more interactive, a little bit more picture, less text. It's hard to sit in your seat and watch nothing but text, right? It's boring. Anyway, that was me. I was like, holy cow, what have I gotten into? I got a lot of learning to do, so it was like work from sun up to sundown and then some and try to figure all this out. So I had a lot of great help from a lot of great people. So this kind of goes back to the community piece. As long as there's a community around you, I found that the DevOps community is incredibly good at helping pull you through. So it's been a year or so I've been in this job, and I could not have gotten there without the help of a lot of very good people. And there's a lot of trial and error, which is that fail fast thing, right? Go out, try it. If it doesn't work, try it again. Make another change, try it again. I'm getting really good at that. And then take as much education as you can. And then, from my perspective, I had to do a little bit at a time. Just kind of take in as much as I could, figure it out, think I got it figured out, move on to the next thing. So a couple of just snippets here of various pieces of the pie that I work with on a regular basis. So that's my day-to-day ecosystem. Because that one's a little bit overwhelming. Can be, if you try to take it all in at once. And I'm only a year in, that's a lot of names to take in a year time. So I boil it down to this. I do a lot of demos because when I tell you that you can do Linux networking on a switch, you go, okay, show me. I'm from Missouri, you gotta show me. So I do a lot of demos, and it's really kind of fun. But you've gotta set those demos up because what you wanna see might be different from what he wants to see, and she wants to see something completely different. Oh, and by the way, make OpenStack work on top of all of that. Yeah, so I wanna do it once or twice, replicate it by pushing a go button, or typing Vagrant up in this case. So I've got, and those are really hard, I apologize for the text. White was a really bad choice for my green windows. So version control, I'm trying to get away from the .BAK. I got to admit, I still default to that sometimes. And so like even yesterday, so a year into this using Git thing, even yesterday, I merged a development branch with a friggin' master branch, and the guys go, did you do that? I'm like, I don't think so. I was just trying to update the README file. I did that. Version control. So they were able to back it out, thank goodness. Another version control story. Last night, 9 o'clock, I'm looking through my slide deck, make sure I didn't, in my Farm Bill education, didn't mistype something, have a misspelled word or something like that. So I go in here to go through and do a last run through my demo. I decided to change one of the logos, or my demo, my presentation. I decided to change one of the logos, so I cut that one file out in the image and put a new image in. I go to save it to box.com. All of a sudden I look at my presentation, after taking a quick break, came back. All of the images were gone. You want to talk about freaking out? I'm on stage at 9:55 this morning. It's like, all right, I got to build this thing from scratch overnight. Not fun. Speaking of on stage, how much, am I good on time? All right, good. So, version control. In case anybody else runs into the same issue, because it's the second time it's happened to me, there's a version control system on Box. If you go look at your files on the website, they've got a V number. There's a V18, V19, whatever iteration you're at. You can actually go back in time and reclaim your file. I'm down with it. It's awesome. So GitLab, really cool. I can build entire demos, hit go, it'll validate all my configurations, it'll validate everything's working right, test it out, check for state, and then even Behave will go out and it'll say, hey, I'll say, hey, go check for this, go check for that. So testing stuff like that. So, and I, sorry, chef guys, I really suck at Ruby. I suck at coding, so I don't do Ruby if I can help it. I got to get smart people to help me with that. So I kind of default to text and SSH a little bit too much. So this is my playpen. Git, GitLab, then VirtualBox for that hypervisor piece, Vagrant for the orchestration, and then I do use Chef for some automation, but like I said, I got to rely on somebody else. So anyway, and then Behave for some test pieces. So if I take all that and use that playpen, and I go look at NetDevOps, rapid provisioning, now it's a lot easier than it used to be. I can spin up a 12, 16 box simulation, have it configured for a certain configuration that I want in minutes. As long as it takes those VMs to spin up, that's how long it takes me to build my demos. As long as I've got something already done, canned, ready to go. Hot swapping a switch in production, I don't have to go through that, oh, make sure I copy off the config. Okay, go ahead and pull the switch, put a new one in, push the new config down, but somebody's got to be on site to actually do some basic IP interface information so I can actually get to it. So I can automate all that stuff now. And then configuration management is that version control piece. So anyway, automation, I actually built these, so living proof that a networking guy can take and build automation of some sort. All right? I'm not going to read through those because it's a lot of text and it's my hammer. So my version control, I use Git for everything. And I love some of the things that Nathan said there. As far as sharing, I put everything that I do straight to Git. If you know Git, I'm not paying for these drops, right? So it's like, it's all free. So when I go talk to folks, it's like, hey, I've got a build of that. Here's the link. They can pull it down. So it's really pretty cool. Speaking of, GitLab, so I was working with a guy on a simulation, and it's like, he spins it up in GitLab, he's like, it's breaking here. I'm like, I can't see it. He's like, here's a link. So you can log into somebody else's GitLab, see the test results, and see exactly where it's breaking and help fix it. So it's even across organizations, so I thought that was really awesome. So my lessons learned here is, you see I'm trying to really be clever here and add the pictures, right? I'm making a very concerted effort in doing this. So I suck at writing code. We've already established that, so I do a little bit, but I rely on stealing other people's code as much as I can because, yeah, right? Why build the ship from the bottom up when it's already half built somewhere else? So these concepts are continuously recycled. You've seen, I've kind of shown you a 20-plus year timeline, right? All of the concepts, I think, are kind of the same. So recycled there. Network engineers, if you're in DevOps and you think that the guys down the hall that do the networking piece are a bunch of clowns, they might be, I don't know. But if you think that they're hopeless, helpless, you can never help change them, you might be wrong. Reach out, invite them to some community stuff, because I'll tell you, as a networking person, I never knew about the community until I started this job. So, like I said, 1 year, it's all pretty new to me. There's a good chance the guys down the hall in the networking department don't know either. So I just throw it out there, just try to, cross-functional team, the best teams that I've seen are what they would call themselves cloud teams. They've got the networking folks, the dev folks, the ops folks, the development teams, the end user for the consumer of the apps, all those people in the same room working together to an end goal, unbelievable. It's like magic happens. There's no infighting. You're one team. So just like in NFL football, we got it back now. Everybody pulls together, right? So here's my spiel, right? Here's my wannabe smart quote. If some random farm kid off a farm in the Midwest can make a transition like this, I'm betting that the smart folks in your IT department can. So it's all about the NetDevOps, for me at least, for now. Any questions? No? Thank you so much for having me.